This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Sins of the Father, Part 12. Yes, y'all, your girl is back home and back at it again. So, hence the hair. When we left off, we found out that Aunt Catherine was a cold piece of work, and there are 5 new members in the St. James family, and it seems like they might just fit right in. Uncle Nigel's 2 oldest illegitimate children, Sincere and Saint, appeared to have already been in the know about who their father was and what he was into. And his youngest 3 children, the triplets, Simone, Chantal, and Star, may be identical, but their personalities clearly set them apart. They were none the wiser about the life that their father actually lived, but none of them thought that their mother was the main chick. As it stands, the only member of the family who has any idea that these 5 adult children of Nigel's even exist is the Queen Mother. And she's prepared for whatever. She has no idea what Catherine has up her sleeve, though. While Donovan and Portia were sitting at the dining room table, enjoying a steak, lobster, baked potato, and a fresh salad, a celebratory dinner made by Portia after Donovan sexed her from the windows to the walls, the Queen Mother was providing the family with an update. She said, "So I got a video from Stacks. I'm not sure how Donovan managed to get Portia to loosen the reins, but he did. And to ensure his compliance, she explained the whole booby trap. She showed him the layout on a laptop, but the soldier was able to use the surveillance system to identify multiple devices all over the property. Now, we used Jeff in the past to create some devices for us, and I know that we've used some other members of the team to do the same, but does anybody have anybody knowledgeable and skilled at disabling them without the code?" Manny and Idra both said that they didn't, but they checked. Armand, who was on the phone because he was still at the St. James estate, said that they didn't. Big Wood said, "I might know somebody, but it'll take time for me to get a hold of him. And when I do, it's gonna cost just to have a conversation with that man." The Queen Mother said, "I don't care how much it costs. If it's good and he can do it, I'm willing to pay whatever. I gotta get my baby out of there." And Q said, "And this is why I should not be the kingpin. There isn't any reason why I can't make a phone call as soon as we know where Donovan is, and I can have federal agents all over this." The Queen Mother said, "Son, there are too many moving pieces that we cannot explain to the feds. I get that Acevedo gave you a lot of leeway when you accepted the job, and he gave you even more leeway with that situation with Melissa. But this is different. We got her co-defendant tied up at the safe house with a broken leg, a gunshot wound, and an incision in his southern region, and the son of the Queen Pin held up in a cabin covered in explosive devices. The feds are not going to come in, free Donovan, and walk away." Alejandro said, "Well, I definitely don't know anybody. What exactly do we do when we have multiple heads with different opinions?" The Queen Mother said, "My son is not the head yet. Until his coronation, he is in an interim role. And since this is my son we're talking about, I get to decide." Manny said, "I beg to differ. I am still the head of all 5 families. While I don't necessarily agree with calling the feds in, we absolutely need to keep Weinstein abreast as to what's going on here. He has some connections in government that we may very well be able to use, and he has the ability to keep our names out of it." Then True said, "We got company." And in walked Maribel and Lorenzo. Maribel asked, "Any updates?" The Queen Mother told her what they knew for sure. And then Manny said, "We have 3 possible courses of action, and we're considering them all." And Maribel said, "Time is of the essence. We need to get Donovan out of there before that crazy woman hurts him. When Rennie gets here, we need to get the location out of Jeff and the code to deactivate those bombs. I do not believe that Portia's the only one with the code." Stephanie said, "Cousin, by the looks of things, I don't think Donovan is in any danger right now. There is only one way that I can think of that he managed to get untied." Queen Mother said, "Not now, Stephanie. Don't do that." Maribel said, "I don't care what he has to do to stay alive. She better enjoy every minute of it while she can, because when I get my hands on her, she'll be taking those memories with her to hell." On the phone, Amir said, "I hate to interrupt, but Queen B, this would probably be a good time for you to let them know who's going to be in attendance. We're in motion. And the Queen Mother said, so, Nigel was a busy man. When Catherine walks in, with all 5 of Nigel's children in tow, their heads are all on a swivel, taking in all of the family that's gathered there. And there are a lot of people there. The heads of all the families, their wives or husbands and children. Samuel and Miss Charlotte, Wise and Selima have cut their honeymoon short and returned to the States for the event. Angela made it just in the nick of time, with LJ, Regina, Anya, and Ron. Even Pastor Corey came to be by Stephanie's side. Rennie has arrived without fail. Uncle Art, his wife Tessa, and their son AJ, and Catherine's siblings, their spouses, and their children flew in from Trinidad. And Star, the younger of the 3 triplets, leaned over to the middle girl, Chantal, and said, I sure hope all these fine niggas ain't related to us, 'cause damn, as she locked eyes with Big Wood. And at that exact moment, Stephanie elbowed True and said, she checking out your man. True just rolled her eyes. Chantal said, we are here for Daddy's funeral, not for you to find your next mark. Star said, well, excuse me, everybody can't be a nun like you, Chantal. And Simone said, this is a memorial service. Will you two act like y'all got some damn decorum? Shortly thereafter, the memorial service began. Each person who chose to had an opportunity to speak. And Catherine, in her usual regal Teflon demeanor, took advantage of that opportunity. She went last. And when she did, she said, I want to thank you all for coming to help celebrate the life of my husband. Nigel was not a perfect man. He made a lot of mistakes. But I'd like to believe that his good outweighed his bad. And while we had no children of our own, he was in fact a father. Please allow me to introduce you to his 5 children. His son Sincere, his son Saint, and his daughters, Simone, Chantal, and Star. Their mother couldn't be with us here today, but I expect that you all will go with me back to the estate, where we'll have refreshments and everyone will have an opportunity to get to know one another better. Nigel's will be read and a video will be played. I believe that it'll be best if we all hear directly from Nigel on what his wishes are for the St. James organization and for his legacy. When Star went to get up, Catherine said, this is going to conclude the remarks. I believe that it's best that we end this gathering on a high note. Star said, so we was just supposed to come here, sit here, and be gawked at? We wasn't supposed to say nothing? Simone said, decorum, Star. On the way back out of the chapel, Catherine pulled Sincere to the side and said, you need to have a conversation with your siblings. As the firstborn son, you have a responsibility. I don't care what you know and what you don't know. I find it hard to believe that your father didn't prepare you for this day. I get why he may not have told his daughters, but you need to rein them in. There are women in this family who would cut their throats sooner than they would play with them. And whatever feelings they have about their father, who he was, and the decisions that he made, they need to take up with a therapist. Because the minute one of them shows out, you are all out. And up a creek without a paddle. Not one of you has 2 nickels to rub together, a pot to piss in, or a window to throw it out of. Now, Saint is already working for the family, but I can snap a finger and change that. Get them together, or as quickly as they entered this family, they'll be exiting it. Understood? Sincere said, my father told me that he was in charge of a large-scale operation. He was the face of that operation, and he had a partner who held it all together. He called that partner Twin. When I asked why, he said that that partner was a Gemini who had 2 faces. And as long as you stayed on the right side of that partner, you got to see the good twin. But if you got on the wrong side, you met that partner's twin baby 380s. He never gave that twin a gender. I assumed that twin was a female. I also assumed that twin was his wife. Never discussed that with Saint. But we both heard the stories. Our father trained us both. We both have our strong suits. He felt that Saint was best used as a finisher because he works best alone. But he never told me what it was that he wanted me to do. He just sent me to New York, where I learned how to do all of these things that I had no idea how I was going to use. And he always said that I was the man of the house. When he wasn't home, I was in charge. I was a child. He wasn't home a lot. The responsibilities that have been on my back have been heavy, but I carried them. And now that he's gone, ain't nothing changed. I'm going to get my sisters together. But I need to know what I'm getting them together for. Catherine said, you're getting them together so that you can be the head of this family. You can't be distracted rescuing Star when she's passed out at frat houses at college by Chantal's infatuation with her pastor, who's a married man with children, by the way, by Simone's volatile lesbian relationship with her on-again, off-again girlfriend. And you really cannot be distracted by your mother's secret trips, rendezvous, and sexcapades with young niggas that she barely knows. Sincere looked shocked, because he didn't know how Catherine knew that. You don't only need to wrangle your sisters, you need to handle your mother, too. You need to handle her before I do. She is only still alive because it was important to this organization that you all have a mother. And since I was not interested in being a stepmother, I let her live. But the only way that any of this is going to work is if she takes full accountability for all of the choices that she made. Is if she tells you all the complete and unmitigated truth. If you hear from her what your options are. I've already said too much, because when the rubber hits the road, it's going to take her, you, and me to make all of this work, to keep the organization safe, to keep you safe. Sincere said, I don't know how you know all that you know. I'm pretty sure my father didn't know all that stuff. And you're right. Without my father, we don't have nothing. He made sure the bills were paid, we had food on the table and clothes on our back. He wanted us to learn how to work for what we wanted. I know my mother got an allowance, but I don't even know what she spent it on. Don't get me wrong, she bought us whatever we asked for. But doctors, school, my father cut the checks. Catherine said, and that is where you're wrong. I cut those checks. Sincere said, what? Catherine said, your father increased your mother's allowance to cover your education. She spent it. When you were in the first grade and the first overdue notice came to the P.O. box, I set up a fund to have all of your educational expenses automatically drafted from that account. My husband's children weren't going to be expelled from a private school because their mother couldn't manage her finances. Sincere said, okay, wait. When we were kids, Saint fell off that ATV and he got seriously hurt. He was in the hospital for like a week. The bill was astronomical. I heard my mother tell my father that she didn't have enough money to pay it. And he told her that that was BS. 2 days later, I heard her telling my aunt that it got paid. Catherine said, I paid it. Sincere said, now why would you? Catherine said, your brother was in a private hospital. Once his emergency needs were met, they had the right to transfer him to a public hospital. They were saying that he might not ever walk again. We had the money. But how was your father going to explain to me what he spent $350,000 on in Miami? My issue was never with you children. And this is not about speaking ill of the dead or making either of your parents look bad. I'm just giving you the truth. When everybody arrived back at the St. James estate, a smorgasbord of food was readily available to them. All of the best Trinidadian cuisine. And as the family mulled around, greeting one another, conversing, and introducing themselves to Nigel's 5 children, Simone ducked off back to the sitting room to see what her mother was up to. Inside, Annabelle was in shambles. The well-put-together woman who'd shown up at the St. James estate had devolved into an absolute mess. The writing was on the wall, and she knew she was going to have to tell her children everything. Everything, including how a barely 21-year-old, hot-in-the-drawers, wild young lady entertained and seduced a man who she knew was clearly married, lied about being on birth control, poked holes in condoms, and went out of her way to get pregnant, thinking that was going to get that older man to leave his wife. And when the birth of their first son didn't work, she resorted to blackmail. And when that failed, she slipped a little something in Nigel's drink and got pregnant the second time. And when Nigel got hip to the game and was no longer as easy to manipulate, she took fertility drugs and a used condom from the trash and impregnated herself a third time, conceiving triplets all by herself. She was also gonna have to tell them that was his last straw. The only thing she could get from him was money. He got that vasectomy and started finding his entertainment elsewhere. On the rare occasion that he spent the night, the only pleasure going down in the palace was happening by way of her throat. And that was how she stayed in Gucci slides and Birkin bags. While he didn't want her anymore, he'd made it very clear that there wouldn't be another man raising his children, and his children wouldn't wake up to another man in her bed. So when he came to town to spend time with them or take them on quick vacations, she'd blow town and find her a winner wherever she was, spending his money on young niggas, getting her rocks off. She'd held, and lost her position as mistress 5 years in, and she'd spent the last 20 years spinning her wheels while she was having that very humiliating conversation with her children in private, because Catherine was gracious enough to give her that. The family was sharing Nigel's stories and wondering how Catherine was keeping it all together. When his children went to the study to talk with their mother, she'd left the room, and Amir said that he'd check on her. Right before she left the room, some other folks did too, though. Big Wood had gone over to Miss Catherine and whispered something in her ear. And then he walked up on True and said, "Lil' mama, let me holler at you for a minute." True said, "Wood, this is not the time." Big Wood said, "You can walk out of this room voluntarily, or I can embarrass you in front of all these people." True looked up at Big Wood and said, "I know you're not threatening to put hands on me." Then Big Wood wrapped one arm around her, picked her up off the floor, and carried her out the room. Stephanie said, "Bye, True. See you later, girl." And everybody burst out laughing. True said, "What are you doing? Put me down. I was coming." Big Wood said, "Don't ever make me ask you something twice that I shouldn't have to ask you but once. You mad? Be mad. But when you call me, I'm coming. When I need you, I need you." True said, "All right. But if you pick me up and carry me out of a room, it damn sure better not be to argue." Big Wood said, "You are working the biggest case of your career. I got information you can use." True said, "And what I gotta do to get it?" Big Wood pulled the skeleton key that Catherine had handed him out of his pocket, pulled True over to a room, unlocked the door, pushed her in, entered behind her, closed and locked it, and said, "I think you forgot who the hell I am. Let me remind you right quick. Take all of this off. Turn around, bend over, and put your hands on the bed." And True did as she was told. And when Big Wood was face deep from the back, True's legs gave out. Big Wood took each leg in one hand and held her up in the air. He flipped, tossed, and rubbed it down. And when he was finished, True was barely holding on to consciousness. But Big Wood wasn't actually done. He said, "Stand up." True said, I can't." Big Wood said, "That word ain't in your vocabulary. Stand up." And when she did, he unfolded that anaconda and long and slow stroked her from the back. True had to bury her face in the bed because it had been nearly a week, and that was too long. She was pulsing, he was pulsing, and the only one of them who was even making an attempt to make this an extended session was Big Wood, and he was failing miserably. 6'5", 250 plus pounds. He could not afford to go like that, because if he did, he would have collapsed all over itty bitty True. So he scooped her up, sat down on the bed, and let her bring the session to an end, sitting on his lap with her back to him. And when True bent over, put her hands flat on the floor, went into a full split, and put her legs back around his waist, Big Wood was a goner. He watched as True did push-ups on the D while talking big stuff. She said, "So this what you gonna do? When we mad, you gonna give me that grade AD? And then what?" And Big Wood said, "And then we gonna work it out." And True said, "What you saving it for? Let it go." And Big Wood did.